That's embarrassing. Oh boy, I didn't see that. But there you go. That's embarrassing. Here I am. Lovely night. How's everybody doing? What's new? Good to see you all. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. It is a lovely evening. It is very humid. Today in New York City, it was very, very humid, and then it rained a whole lot, and now it is night, and it's back to being very, very, very humid. And I'm sitting here in my lovely Brooklyn apartment, and it's Tuesday night, and I am back at full strength. If you noticed last stream, I was sneezing a lot, and yeah, I was, but now I'm back at my full strength. Went to the gym today, and wow, now I am ready to roll. So many good things happening. The BreadTube book is on the brink of being completed and available. I've been exercising. I've been thinking about politics. I've been thinking about world events, and I am ready to engage with all of you. So welcome, 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 welcome. No, I am not in a hospital. This is simply my lovely Brooklyn apartment. Don't worry. Yes, this is a cord. This is a pillow, but not a hospital. I'm in my lovely Brooklyn apartment. I can even show you the window here if you want. We can just curve and oh, look at that. Look at that. The lovely window to my lovely Brooklyn apartment. And there we go. See, it is not a hospital. Not a hospital. My goodness. My goodness. That was a weird question. I've never had people think I was in the hospital before. But hey, no, it's a fair question. I can see how you might think that with the white background and all of that, right? No, folks, here we are, and I'm ready to engage with you. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. Please hit the notifications bell. Violence in Mexican midterms. The way we roll here is that I write down your super chat questions. I first give my opening introductory remarks. Then from there, we do our roll call. Infantilism in Western culture. And then from there, we do our roll call where I call you out as I see you, names and locations. And then from there, after that, I then, at that point, answer your super chat questions until the super chat questions run out, and then our show is over. That's how we do it. So your super chat questions have a lot to do with how good the show is. So be sure to keep them rolling in. Be sure to ask good questions. And I guess, with no further ado, I will take a sip of unnamed water beverage. Not unnamed diet beverage, because I don't want to stay up all night, right? We don't want to be up all night. I do have work in the morning, for goodness sakes. But I'll drink the unnamed water beverage. And from there, this is interesting. The light is not going off, but it's getting shaky. Now, I wonder how this works. Do I turn it up? Turn it down? Oh, that turns it down, and that turns it up. I'm always learning new things. All right, from there, I will jump in to my opening remarks. So be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. Be sure to hit the notifications bell. If you have something you want me to talk about, be sure to send me a super chat. Those get answered in the second half of the show. And now I will jump into it. Folks, if you have been following left social media lately, if you've been following my Twitter or my Facebook, you know that I am very, very, very enthusiastically following the results of the election in Peru. Now, at the moment, it looks pretty clear that Pedro Castillo, the leader of Peru Libre, Free Peru, a communist, Marxist-Leninist, anti-imperialist party, is probably going to win the election, but it ain't over till it's over. Most of the votes have been counted, and the votes that are coming in all seem to be from areas where he has strong support. But we don't know. We don't know. So, there's plenty of talk of foul play. There's already the right wing is crying foul. So we're all watching the situation in Peru. All watching it very, very carefully, hoping for the forces of anti-imperialism and city building and socialism to prevail. It's certainly a close vote. And for those of you who are not watching Peru, or who have been watching Peru and want to watch some other things, and that's why people are posting giant pencils in the chat, because that is the symbol of Peru Libre, is a giant pencil. For those of you who have not been watching that, there is another thing that you can be happy about. Our favorite person, or I guess I should say, my favorite person in the world, all right? Vince, oil-rich countries. My favorite person in the world. My absolute favorite human being. The person that I just hold in high esteem and think the world of. The person that I just, every day I wake up and say, how in the world can I be more like her? The great Kamala Harris is back in the news. You would think, as Vice President of the United States, she'd be in the news more often. But no, she's gone quite a long time without a press conference, without making the news. But the great Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States, the feminine savior of humanity, the left-wing revolutionary radical, far-left vice president who is going to dismantle American capitalism and imperialism and has such good morals, the great Kamala Harris, who never lies, always tells the truth about absolutely everything, and is so sincere in everything she does, our amazing Vice Commander-in-Chief, the great Kamala Harris, is back on the news. She is back in the news. Folks, she is back in the news. And wow. I mean, she is back in the news. Folks, she's back in the news. And she's made a surprise visit to Guatemala. She visited Guatemala yesterday, I should say. She was in Guatemala yesterday to give a news conference. And she was up there. And she said, if you're thinking of coming to the United States, do not come. Do not come. Do not come. Yes, a great moment in the legacy of Kamala Harris, the exploits of the amazing Kamala Harris. Do not come here. Folks, it was amazing. It was utterly amazing. She was up there. She said, do not come here. I know Donald Trump called you all a shithole country. It was projection, okay? It was projection. Do not come here. We're the shithole country, okay? Barely anyone voted for me. Less than 1% of Democrats voted for me, and I'm now the vice president. Our White House is a lot like the movie Weekend at Bernie's. Do not come here. Do not come here. Do not come here. Okay? Okay? Do not come here. Do not come here. You think you have a drug problem? Half of our 10-year-olds are on drugs. And the other half, if they skip school, I lock their parents in jail. Do not come here. Do not come here. Please, do not come here. Trust me. Trust me. Do not come here. Do not come here. I'm the Vice President of the United States. Do not come here. This place is a nightmare. You think your drug gangs are problematic? Do you know where they got all their guns? They got all their guns from us. Okay? Don't come here. Don't come here. Don't come here now. I know U.S. law says that if you're an asylum seeker, you can legally come and seek asylum. Don't come here. Don't come here, okay? I was a prosecutor in California. I don't care what the laws are. Don't come here. Don't come here. Don't you love that? Whenever Kamala is really uncomfortable, she gets this like demented laugh going on. She just, right? You know, when they asked her about calling Joe Biden a segregationist, I don't know if you remember this. It was a great moment. When they asked Kamala Harris, you know, about, you know, if Joe Biden was a segregationist, she started going, you know, it was a debate. It was a debate. So when she gets back to the United States, they're going to be like, Kamala, you know, you said that America was a shithole country. You know, you told all the immigrants not to come here. She's going to be like, it was Guatemala. No one tells the truth in that country. Everyone lies when they visit Guatemala. Right? Oh my goodness, Kamala Harris. My. Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris. Well, as you know, folks, as you know, the problem that Guatemala and Honduras and Mexico have is simply corruption. There's just corruption there, right? It's a corrupt country. And so Kamala went down there and told him, guys, stop being corrupt, all right? Can we stop that? That whole corruption thing? Can we cut that out, please? All right, thanks. And apparently that's going to says are corrupt. Yes, folks, Kamala Harris, this will go down in history. This will be one of the greatest days in Kamala Harris's legacy as president. This is really something special. Now, for those of us who are actually interested in what might actually be the issue, perhaps we should look at Guatemala's history and the fact that when they elected a popular progressive left-wing leader, Jacobo Arbenz, in 1953, he was toppled in a CIA coup. You can look at the fact that there were brutal military regimes propped up by the United States in Guatemala for many decades, leading up to the genocidal regime of Rios Montt. You can look at the fact that the drug gangs that infest the country are largely armed with U.S.-made military-grade weapons, right? That their weapons largely come from the United States of America. You can look at the fact that the USA has showered money onto the corrupt government of Guatemala for decades and decades and decades, despite the fact that much of the country doesn't have running water, doesn't have electricity. You know, I mean, these things might be relevant in the conversation, but as we learned from Kamala Harris today, stop being corrupt is the American imperialist answer to the problem. The people of Central America are just corrupt. They're corrupt. They don't know how to play by the rules, you know? They're just always playing by the rules, and you know, look, I mean, when they're kids, they cheat at Monopoly, you know, and when they're in high school, they cheat at soccer and baseball, and I guess, you know, when they get to be presidents, they just take bribes. It's a problem they got down there. The people down there are just corrupt. They just don't know how to play by the rules, right? I mean, I guess we gringos, we white people, we play by the rules all the time, and there you go. They don't, and we do, but we're going to go down there and tell them to play by the rules, play by the rules, play by the rules. Oh boy, yes, Kamala Harris, and Kamala Harris did not visit the border. Did not visit the border because that would be purely symbolic. That would be purely, why actually visit the border? Why visit the place where all the people are going, where there's all these concerns about kids in cages and family separation and all that? No, I mean, why actually go to where the problem's happening, right? I mean, why do that, right? I mean, you know, it's only the place where the problem's actually happening. That's, you know, why do that? I mean, you know, come on, right? Why do that when you can fly to Guatemala and have a photo op and a press conference in the Capitol and tell people not to come? You know, when I listened to Kamala, it almost sounded kind of like, you know, like, you ever have a friend who's like trying to hint that he wants to stay over at your house, right? He's like, hey, you know, I'm going to be in town next week, and, you know, the hotels are really expensive, and you got that really nice couch, and and then, do not come. Do not come. Right? She's just very to the point. Very to the point, you know? I mean, you know, it's like, you know, the Midwesterner in me. We want to be like, you know, well, you know, we're a little busy that weekend, and, you know, I'm not going to be home. No, not Kamala. She's like, do not come. Right? Right? You know, that'll be great. You know, like, you know, somebody's in the area, and, you know, my wife and I don't want him to come over. We'll just play that clip. Do not come. Do not come. Right? Very, very New York City, California, to the point. Right? And no beating around the bush. Right? None of this, you know, well, you know, we'd like you to come to the United States. You know, we would like to have as many people over as possible, but, you know, we're running a little low. You know, the pandemic has hit us really hard, and it's not the right time of year. I mean, maybe we'll come next year. Can you do next year, perhaps? Maybe do next year. Oh, geez. Maybe, you know, if you came through Canada rather than over the Mexico border. You know, that might work. That might work. Let me call the folks up in Montana, and we'll talk this. You know, I don't know. There's something about like Midwestern hospitality. You don't want to just say to people, "Do not come," right? You don't want to do that, right? And New York, California, Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York City, they're just like, "Do not come, do not come." Even Chicago a little bit. Chicago, I think they're like, "Do not come, do not come." But you know, in Ohio, we always want to beat around the bush. We want to make the person feel a little comfortable. You know, well, geez, you know, geez, I don't know if we got room for your whole family. I know you don't want to come alone. If it was just you, we could have you come. We could have you come. But you want to bring your whole family and your wife and kids. And there was this whole mess about us separating families at the border. So maybe best not to come, you know, maybe not. You know, maybe that's just not the way. It's not going to work this year. But you know, we'd love to have you come over, Bob. We'd love to have you come over, Bob. I don't know. I'm having fun here, but it's a very serious topic. It's a very, very serious topic. We really shouldn't be laughing about this at the end of the day. It's a very serious topic. It's a very, very serious topic because, you know, nobody wants to talk about the fact that the USA has propped up brutal regimes all throughout the region. That the USA has armed drug dealing gangs. Sure, collaborations and appearances. You know, future collaborations and appearances. Nobody wants to talk about this. Nobody wants to talk about the root cause of the problem, and especially they don't want to talk about the solution. The solution to most of the problems we face is economic development. Okay? I mean, that's, you know, and, you know, you have a region in Central America where you have a lot of people who don't speak Spanish. You have a lot of people who don't read and write. You know, you have a lot of people that are, you know, don't have running water and don't have electricity. And as a result of that, you know, you have a big problem with these narco gangs. You have a big problem of economic desperation. Well, the answer to that is economic development. Look, if people can get jobs that don't involve being shot at and don't involve, you know, risking their lives, generally they take those jobs, right? Aristide. They generally take those jobs. You know, if people have real, you know, economic opportunities, they tend to take them. And if you look at the situation in Central America, the answer to the problem is economic development. Look at Nicaragua. Nicaragua, under the leadership of the Sandinistas, with a socialist planned economy, they've raised millions of people out of poverty. They have wiped out illiteracy. They have industrialized much of the country. I mean, people are not fleeing Nicaragua. I mean, there are problems there. There's issues, you know, but people aren't fleeing. They have economic opportunity. You know, the central planning of the economy has resulted in that. And now, you know, we have a popular front left-wing government in Mexico, right? And the answer to the problem on the U.S. border, the answer to the problem on the U.S.-Mexico border is called the Sandino-Zapata Economic Corridor, economic development. The time has come for the United States, Mexico, China, and Nicaragua to sit down and make a plan for providing infrastructure to the region, bringing in investment, and raising people out of poverty. Economic development, central planning, economic development, and the construction of infrastructure is the solution. And the plan is called the Sandino-Zapata Economic Corridor. Sandino is the national hero of Nicaragua. Zapata, Emil Zapata, is the national leader of Mexico. And between the USA, China, Mexico, and Nicaragua, a vast program to end the drug gang chaos there could solve the problem. All right? Now, the Center for Political Innovation will have a formal proposal soon, right? We don't have it in writing yet because we want to get it exactly right. We don't want to be sloppy about it. But the Sandino-Zapata Economic Corridor is the solution. And that needs to be our answer. right? The right wing plays up anti-immigrant bigotry, plays up the idea that immigrants are all terrorists, that immigrants are all murderers, and we should be xenophobic, and that's not going to solve the problem, right? And bigotry and hate and dehumanization of people is not going to solve the problem. On the other hand, the liberals want to act like there is no problem, or Central American countries are just naturally corrupt, or this is the legacy of white supremacy and we should all just feel really, really bad. Well, I mean, it is the legacy of white supremacy and all of that, but we're not going to solve the problem by feeling bad. We're going to solve the problem with economic development. Economic development. The road to eliminating terrorism, to eliminating narco gangs, to eliminating much of the problem is economic development, progress. We have to move forward. And the Center for Political Innovation has a plan. We have a plan, right? And it's pretty common sense, pretty basic common sense. If you provide running water to that area, if you provide electricity to that area, you provide real economic opportunities to the people of that region, if you did that, you would solve the problem. People wouldn't be wanting to flee their homes desperately. Leftists who put ID poll before growth and development. Leftists put ID poll before growth and development. But, we're keeping our eye on the situation in Peru because Pedro Castillo, he's a real socialist. He's a real revolutionary, right? You look at the way he's operating. You look at the way he's organizing. This guy gets it, right? He gets it. He's not trying to shove a socially liberal agenda down the throats of deeply conservative Peruvians. The majority of his votes are coming from the countryside, the rural areas. It's folks with indigenous blood who are voting for him, right? And those folks may not be aware. Let's go over some quick history of Peru. Why not, right? Thought you would appreciate my wife before knowing your name. I used to refer to you as suit socialist. Thought you would appreciate my wife before knowing your name. Used to refer to you as suit socialist. Love your content. Well, thank you, Red Rye. Thank you. Let's go with some history, right? So Peru, impoverished country, lots of folks with indigenous heritage. And, there's a big divide in Peru between the cities and the rural areas. Big divide. Big divide. In the cities you have, more modern stuff. There's a lot of people in the Peruvian countryside who've just been left behind. Speak indigenous languages, don't have running water, don't have electricity. It's kind of a dual power situation. I mean, in some areas, the indigenous tribes have their own governments that have their own laws, right? Some of the indigenous tribes in Peru, thank you, Piano Man. Some of these indigenous tribes in Peru, they have their own legislation, I mean, they, and you can read about this, they have their own courts and their own procedures, and like the actual Peruvian government hasn't even penetrated the areas to enforce their laws, so it's Peru is a country that has been left behind by capitalism. I mean, it's been left behind by global imperialism. And this is what the imperialists do. They keep the countries in a state of economic underdevelopment, right? They want Peru to be a captive market, buying products from Western capitalism. They don't want Peru to develop its own industries, to develop its own mining, its own manufacturing. They don't want Peruvians to be rising up out of poverty and selling their own products and all of that. They want to keep Peru poor, and it has been poor. It's been a very, very poor country. Now, during the 1980s, really, escalating in the late 1980s, there was a crazed, violent, extremist uprising led by a group of crazy, thank you, Andre, crazy ultra-Maoists, right? And, they were called El Sendero Luminoso, the Shining Path, and it was this crazy split from the Communist Party of Peru, led by Dr. Ambimal Guzman, Presidente Gonzalo. And this was, they were trying to address the needs of the rural folks. They were trying to do the Mao thing where they, redistribute land and such, but they were particularly violent. They were known to cut people's heads off, kind of like ISIS. And instead of trying to build an alliance with all the other communist parties in Peru, they actually had a policy of trying to exterminate all the other communist parties in Peru. And, they blew up the headquarters of various other communist parties. They bombed the Chinese embassy. They attacked, targets aligned with Fidel Castro in Cuba. They attacked indigenous groups, tribal groups and stuff. And they were just a very, very violent, crazy, extremist organization, at the Shining Path. And the Shining Path, they were pretty awful, but they were this kind of fanatical, violent death cult. Baby boilers, protect your swing sets. I don't know what that's a reference to, Natalie, but swing sets. We'll joke about that a little bit. But, so the Shining Path, they were pretty awful. And there was a widespread fear of the Shining Path. So out of fear of the Shining Path, the far right wing was able to set up a military dictatorship. Fujimori, this man of Japanese descent, became the military dictator of Peru. And he was atrocious, and people who disagreed with him got disappeared in the middle of the night. They tortured people. I mean, it was the military dictatorship. The Shining Path was bad. Well, they weren't as bad as the Fujimori regime. The Fujimori dictatorship was a nightmare, and the Fujimori dictatorship brought in neoliberalism, and it resulted in mass poverty and suffering. So you had the Fujimori dictatorship that was bringing in austerity and lowering people's living standards and torturing people. And one of the things the Fujimori dictatorship did is it engaged in genocide against the indigenous population, forcibly sterilizing people through boiling water on peasant babies. I didn't know that, but it doesn't surprise me. Fujimori, the dictatorship of Fujimori, they sterilized indigenous women. Hundreds of thousands of women, had their tubes tied against their will because Fujimori wanted to make the country less indigenous, didn't like the indigenous people, didn't want them to breed. It was Malthusianism, right? It was, those people who think that there's overpopulation and they don't want ethnic groups they deem to be inferior to have babies, right? The global warming crowd, those people, they got their way. And under this brutal military regime, they were trying to exterminate the indigenous population. So it was just absolutely horrendous. It was an absolutely horrendous regime. Now, ultimately, Fujimori, was removed from power. They transitioned after the crisis or whatever. After the leader of the Shining Path was arrested and sent to prison, and they transitioned away from kind of a Bonapartist, military regime that was implementing austerity. They transitioned, towards a more pluralist, kind of open society. But the left was always weak. And this is what people don't get. In the 21st century, the beginning of the 21st century, Chavez took power in 1999 in Venezuela. Evo Morales took power in Bolivia in 2003. You had the Sandinistas were back in power in 2006. You had Rafael Correa in Ecuador. You had the Kirchners in Argentina. Latin America was moving to the left, right, in the early 2000s. Not Peru. You know why? Because of the Shining Path. Because all they had to do to keep average Peruvians from voting for the communists is just remind them of the trauma of what the Shining Path did, right? Every time there'd be a leftist who was gaining some momentum, there would be a couple more Shining Path, Facebook anti-populism, there'd be a couple more Shining Path attacks. There's a couple groups in the mountains or something, and they'd say, geez, you guys remember what the communists did? And even now, right? Even now, they're still trying in the propaganda to link Pedro Castillo to the Shining Path, because the Shining Path is so hated. The Shining Path, that group is so violent and so extreme and so bloodthirsty. And the trauma of a war where you have hundreds of thousands of people dying, you have, all kinds of people being tortured and public executions, and because of the horror, the absolute horror of the Shining Path, right? The Peruvian population wouldn't vote and get behind leftists, right? And I'll tell you, I went to the World Festival of Youth and Students in 2013 in Quito, Ecuador. I met with many different Peruvian communist groups. The official Peruvian Communist Party, the Peruvian followers of Enver Hoxha, the PCPML, and none of those people had anything good to say about the Shining Path. And I would ask them all about the Shining Path. I'd say, was the Shining Path any good? And they'd say, and a number of them told me that the Shining Path were CIA agents. Now, I've never seen any proof of that. But that's how they felt. They said that, all the communists in Peru hate the Shining Path, but the Shining Path was big, and it had a lot of, peasants behind them. It was some kind of weird, brainwashing, mass death, mass killing, mass torture group. And, because this crazy Maoist ISIS was around, a lot of Peruvians hated communism, okay? A lot of Peruvians hated communism because of the Shining Path. So now that it's taken this long, right? This is 2021, and every other Latin American country, Chile, Argentina, Bolivia, Venezuela, all the other Latin American countries, their left has kind of gotten its stuff together. But it's taken this long for the left in Peru to recover from the damage done by the Shining Path. Okay, keep that in mind. Second of all, right, the woman who is the other candidate. So it's Pedro Castillo is the communist candidate, the progressive, socialist, anti-imperialist candidate. The woman who's running against him is the daughter of Fujimori, the dictator, right? And Fujimori, the right-wing dictator, there's enough people that were terrified of the Shining Path and thought, hey, Fujimori saved us from the Shining Path. So, and they're trying their hardest in Peruvian media to tell everybody that Pedro Castillo, who is a Christian, who is from, a very different school of thought, he has a very different perspective on things. He's trying to take power peacefully. He's, rooted in the unions. He leads a coalition that includes Marxist-Leninists and includes all kinds of different folks, and he's tied to, land defense groups and indigenous groups. They're trying their hardest in Peruvian media to say that Pedro Castillo is Shining Path. That's how bad the crazy ultra-Maoists are, okay? That the only way the Peruvian left was able to get itself back together is by denouncing and distancing itself from the crazy ultra-Maoists, right? And they're doing it, right? People know that Pedro Castillo is not Shining Path. That he did, I understand he did some, land defense work with farmers who were getting kicked off their land. Good for him. And that he's worked in the labor unions. He's in the past he's called himself a communist. Now he says he's a socialist and a Marxist, but he's not a communist, which probably means he's not ML, right? In a lot of countries, communist refers only to members of the Communist Party, and he's not a member of the Communist Party. He's a member of Peru Libre, which is a communist movement, but it's not the official ML party. Right? And he personally, from what I understand, he's against abortion. His religious beliefs oppose abortion. Now, you can understand why a population, an indigenous population, where the women were being forced to have their tubes tied because the white people in the cities had decided that there were too many of them. Can you understand why some indigenous folks, in rural areas where the government was forcibly tying their tubes might have some questions about abortion? Look, I am for the right to choose, and I know many Peruvian women are. But, we have to be sensitive here, right? When you have a group of indigenous people who have had, the white people trying to exterminate them by forcibly tying their tubes, you can understand why they might have some strong opposition to abortion, okay? But, and look, class analysis, he says, socialism with Peruvian characteristics. There you go. Now, I'm not as socially conservative as Pedro Castillo is. I think abortion should be legal. I think that gay marriage and LGBT stuff should be completely legal, and we should end any stigma around that. People should be able to live their lives as they choose, be who they feel they really are, and be who they really are deep down. Marry who they want to marry. That's their business, and I believe people should be allowed to be who they are. But at the same time, the majority of Peruvians, don't feel that way. And Pedro Castillo, he doesn't feel that way. He's more socially conservative than I am. But he leads a mass movement of Peruvians who want jobs and education, and they're tired of American imperialism. And he has got this agenda for the first 100 days in office, all the things he is going to do. It's very, very exciting. And the support that he has is massive. And he has worn indigenous clothing, right? He has bragged about his legacy of fighting the landowners, right? And he's giving mixed messages, right? Sometimes, I mean, he talks about Che Guevara and he speaks positively about China and such, but he also, says he's not a Chavista, there won't be any Chavismo here, and he's not a Marxist-Leninist, he's not a communist, he's a Marxist and a socialist, but he's not a communist. He's all over the place, and that's okay because it's a coalition, right? It's a popular front. It's a united front, okay? There is a Marxist-Leninist faction. There are Bolivarian folks, there are indigenous folks, there are Trotskyites, there are anarchists. It is a popular front, right? It's a popular front against imperialism. And it's a broad coalition, and there are atheist communists in it, there are Roman Catholics, a lot of Roman Catholics in it, there are indigenous practitioners of indigenous faith who are in it. There are indigenous Peruvians in it, there are white Peruvians in it, there are Asian Peruvians in it. It's a popular front coalition. Thank you, Andre. Thank you very much. And that's why they are on the brink of winning, because they got out of the movement and they got to the masses. Do you hear me? They got out of the movement and they got to the masses, right? If Pedro Castillo had canceled all the indigenous people, who didn't agree with abortion because of their long history of being facing genocide at the hands of the white people, if he had canceled all of them, do you think there would be a movement? If Pedro Castillo had canceled all of the Peruvians that aren't fully on board with LGBT rights and just said, you're rotten, you're deplorables, go, do you think he would have a mass movement? Now, it's a popular front. It's a coalition centered around some key economic demands. Stop having the United States, dominating their economy. Give some land to the population, the indigenous people, workers' rights, protections on the job. It's a popular front. And it's a popular front because it's popular, right? Popular is the point. Meaning, it's a popular front, right? That the people of Peru are hungry and they're desperate and they're tired of austerity and cuts in social spending. And there's a wing of the Peruvian capitalist class that is centered around the daughter of a brutal, genocidal military dictator. And so in order to defeat the dictatorship, they have built a class collaborationist united front based on economic demands. Right? That's what they did. They built a class collaborationist united front, a people's front against fascism, centered around the economic struggle for justice of the people. And it is on the brink of being victorious, right? And this is a very, very exciting development, right? And it's similar to how things happened in Venezuela and how things happened in Bolivia. Right? That, again, when Chavez was first elected, not only did Chavez not say he was a communist, Chavez said he didn't believe in socialism. Chavez said he was neither for capitalism nor socialism. He was for the third way and Bolivarianism, whatever was best for Venezuela. Right? That was what Chavez said, but his election, everybody knew, was a referendum on free market reforms. If you were for what the IMF and the World Bank was doing, you voted for the opposition. If you were in favor of breaking with it, you voted for the Movement for the Fifth Republic, which was Hugo Chavez's party. Hugo Chavez took office on a platform of stopping austerity, and he won. And that's how Venezuela started on the road to socialism. And then, after he'd been in office a couple years, the CIA overthrew him. The military overthrew Hugo Chavez. He was removed from office. But then, after a couple days, the rank-and-file soldiers rose up, and they put Chavez back into office. And after Chavez was back in office, he announced that he was in favor of 21st century socialism, and Bolivia and Venezuela started moving towards socialism, right? When Evo Morales was first elected in Bolivia, his platform was very moderate, right? That people used to say that his party, the movement towards socialism, MAS, it was socialist in name only, that they were just a bunch of liberals and all of that. But everybody knew that Evo Morales was the candidate who was identified with the strikes of the miners, when the miners in Bolivia went on strike, and the movement against the privatization of water, the water fights, that he was the candidate of the popular movement against austerity. And when he got elected, his first speech, his inauguration speech, his first speech began with a moment of silence in memory of Che Guevara. And it was a turning point, right? And that, again, this is my whole thesis. And if you watch the last live, if you watch the live before that, that if you're going to have an anti-monopoly government, a government that fights against the big corporations, a government that fights for working families, if you're going to have that, that government will come into confrontation with the state, with the capitalist state. It will come into confrontation with the capitalist state. And that will necessitate dismantling the capitalist state and building a new state. Any popular, united front, progressive government is going to start coming into conflict with the capitalists and with the billionaires and the state that they've built to prop up their power. And as a result of that, such a government, it'll be necessary to build a new government. And then with that new government, you can build socialism. And this is the revolutionary process. This is the revolutionary process, right? It doesn't always go exactly like this, but this is the revolutionary process. And Peru is in the process of revolution, right? This is the process of revolution. Now, it looks like the Peruvian ruling class is in a situation where they are likely to allow Pedro Castillo to take power peacefully. We shall see. We shall see what happens, But if he takes power peacefully and he wants to stay in power, he is going to have to change the nature of the military. He's going to have to change the nature of the police. He's going to have to change. He's going to have to mobilize average Peruvians like he's already doing, build up communal councils and popular assemblies to have his back, right? He's going to have to do that, and he's going to have to, impede the rights of private property, right? Look, when a lot of these revolutionary governments around the world began, they started out on a platform of not even wanting to have socialism. But it was through the process of taking power and fighting the powers that be, that they were forced to transition. Look, I always make the analogy to Abraham Lincoln. When Abraham Lincoln took office, he did not want to abolish slavery. Did you know that? Abraham Lincoln took office, and he said over and over again that he was not going to abolish slavery. He said, I'm not going to abolish slavery. There was actually another political party that ran against him in the national election called the Free Soilers, or the Radical Democratic Party. And they actually wanted to abolish slavery. And they said, Abraham Lincoln's a big sellout. We're actually going to abolish slavery. He doesn't even want to abolish slavery. Abraham Lincoln took office on a platform of not abolishing slavery. All Abraham Lincoln wanted to do was, he said that when new states come into the United States, they're not going to be slave states. That was one thing he wanted to do. Number two is, he said, we're going to stop making the rest of the country collaborate with the slaveholders, right? That this idea, the fugitive slave law, that says that if a slave from Georgia or Alabama gets free and goes to Illinois or goes to Ohio and Illinois are obligated to arrest him and take him back. No, we're not going to play that. We don't have to cooperate with slavery, and the new states that come into the country are not going to be slave states. That was Abraham Lincoln's platform. He got elected on that. And the slaveholders who were in bed with Wall Street, right? Where do you think Wall Street started? It was an insurance center that insured the ships that sent cheap cotton to Britain. The British Stock Exchange, the London Stock Exchange, the Wall Street insurance cartels, and the London Stock Exchange, the British textile industry, and the Southern plantation owners were so angry and so threatened by having a president in office who was not going to play ball with them, that they took up arms against the U.S. government, right? And the southern states all seceded from the Union. You had the Civil War. And even though Abraham Lincoln had taken office saying, I'm not going to abolish slavery, didn't matter. Didn't matter. Abraham Lincoln took office on a platform of not abolishing slavery, And he was forced to abolish slavery. He was forced to abolish slavery. He was forced to build a whole new army. He made Harriet Tubman a commander. Harriet Tubman became the first woman to lead U.S. soldiers into battle, and she led an army of freed slaves along the Combahee River in South Carolina, liberating plantations, and I mean, it was amazing what Harriet Tubman did. You can read about the Ohio 9th Infantry Regiment. There was a Marxist division of the army, right? That August Willich, a communist, became a brigadier general in the U.S. military. The New York Tribune newspaper that was stirring up the pro-abolitionist voices in New York City. The Republican Party newspaper in New York City hired Karl Marx as their London correspondent. That because of the circumstances, that Lincoln was forced to become very, very radical, because this is how history works. Marxists understand the world in terms of dialectical and historical materialism, all right? That A does not equal A. The first A can never be the same as the next A, because the universe is constantly in a state of change. Constantly in a state of change. And because the universe is constantly in a state of change, that change comes about through contradiction. When two forces clash with each other, right? You first have a thesis, then you have an antithesis, and they clash, creating a synthesis, and then the synthesis becomes the new thesis, which creates an antithesis, which clashes, creating yet another synthesis. This is how history works. This is how history works. History is driven forward by contradiction. And that is why serious Marxists are always attached to real social forces. This is something a lot of people don't get. Serious Marxists are always attached to real social forces. Utopian socialism. Sitting around, drawing up a blueprint for the ideal world. What would your utopia look like? Oh, in my utopia, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, well, in my utopia, blah, 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 blah. Anybody can do that. That's not Marxism. That is called utopian socialism. But Karl Marx was always attaching himself to real social forces. Forces that actually exist and contend and clash with other social forces in the real world. Right? Okay, what if Lincoln never assassinated? Always contend with real forces, and in order to drive forward history. Karl Marx aligned himself with the labor movement because organized labor, workers forming unions on their jobs and going on strike and demanding better pay and conditions and union contracts. That was a real force at the time that Karl Marx was around. It was new, it was exciting, it was bold. The labor movement was this new, exciting force. Workers forming, in the Communist Manifesto, Marx calls them combinations, forming combinations, right? And these real social forces that Karl Marx aligned himself with, they were revolutionary. Karl Marx didn't just stand on the sidelines and say, well, I'm not for unions, I'm not for capitalists, I'm for this magical theory I have called communism. No, he saw that there was a progressive side, the labor movement. He saw there was a reactionary side, the capitalists. So he embedded his revolutionary movement with the workers. They were the progressive side. When the Civil War happened in the United States, what did Karl Marx do? He said, well, Abraham Lincoln, not a communist. Southern slaveholders, not a communist. Well, I, Abraham Lincoln, am for neither. I'm for communism. Did Marx do that? No. Marx aligned himself with Abraham Lincoln and oriented his supporters to be the most fanatical supporters of Abraham Lincoln. Why? Because he saw that they were the progressive force. In the United States, there was a civil war going on. And the primary contradiction was between the slave system and the emerging industrial capitalist system. And Marx was on the side of the industrial capitalists trying to smash the slave system. Again, this is the Marxist way of understanding things. And it's because of this that Marxism has been the ideology of those who actually win, right? You'll notice that the parties that take power and actually create socialism in the world, for the most part, tend to be Marxist parties because this is the Marxist understanding. It is not utopianism. It is not writing a sci-fi novel and trying to impose it on the world. It is rather embedding yourself and making strategic alliances to push forward the contradictions of history, right? This is the Marxist method. And this is what we are seeing unfolding in Peru. It's what we've seen unfold in Nicaragua. And it's what we're seeing unfolding on a global scale. Endorse. So what we are seeing on a global scale. On a global scale, it's what we are seeing unfolding in the world. That imperialism, the rule of the world by monopolists and bankers based in Western countries who dominate the world through their control of the most important commodity in the global economy at this time, petroleum or oil, that outmoded global system of monopoly capitalism is up against the opposition, the axis of resistance, the forces centered around Russia and China, including Iran, Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, Bolivia. The global axis of resistance is standing up against the outmoded, dying system of imperialism and their dying mode of production, oil-based economy. But around the world, we are seeing the rise of an economic alternative. What Russia is doing with the Eurasian Economic Union, what China is doing with One Belt, One Road initiative, what's happened with the Bolivarian alternative of Latin America, all of this is the future. This is the new system. And part of what will lead to the victory of the new system, the new 21st century socialism that's emerging in our time, part of what will secure its victory will be fusion energy, right? If we can get beyond the nightmare of fossil fuels, right? If burning fossil fuels stops being the basis of the global economy, and instead we have a higher source of energy, not windmills, not solar panels, but a higher source of energy. If we can get beyond fossil fuels, we can save humanity from the disaster of climate change, but pretty much from the disaster of capitalism, the way the Western imperialists keep their grip on the world is by controlling oil. And that's why it is the burning urgency of the moment to build Fusion City. Fusion City, all of this. I'm so tired of these climate catastrophe people. We're all going to die from global warming. Well, then why aren't you for Fusion City? If you really are serious about saving the Earth from global warming, thank you, Andre. You're really serious about saving the Earth from global warming. Fusion City now. Putin has called for it. China has called for it. Right? Iran has called for it. We need a global united effort. Global united effort. Right? EPRK. We need a global united effort around fusion energy. And it should be built. We need a global united effort. The United States and Russia and China and India and South Africa and we need them all to sign a united treaty. And we need all the top fusion scientists in the world to come to one single place to work relentlessly, nonstop, with all the funding and all the resources they could possibly need to solve the problem of fossil fuels and get fusion energy now. We must build Fusion City. Fusion City now. Fusion City now. Fusion City now. That's what we need. And anyone who tells you they're concerned about climate change, but they aren't on board with Fusion City, is being phony. You're not going to solve climate change with windmills. You're not going to solve climate change with solar panels. You're definitely not going to solve it by reducing the population and sterilizing people, okay? Fusion City now. That is what is needed more than ever. And, you know, I've talked about the 4-point economic program of the Center for Political Innovation. We've talked about a mass program of reconstruction of the country. We've talked about the need for our natural resources to be managed by the public and, you know, public property, state control of natural resources. We talked about the need for public control of banking and the lending of money and credit to be handed out strategically by the state. We've talked about the need to enact an economic Bill of Rights. And when it comes to climate change, we need Fusion City now. And when it comes to the matter of the catastrophe on our borders and the humanitarian crisis of people from Central America fleeing, what we need is the Sandino-Zapata economic corridor. Look, there are real policy solutions that could solve the problems that we are facing. It is not hopeless. It's not hopeless. It is absolutely not hopeless. It's not hopeless, right? There are real policy solutions. Just like a popular front government is on the verge of taking power in Peru, a real coalition could build a popular front government in the United States of America. The labor unions, the anti-racist activists, average working class Americans who have had it up to here, had it up to their gizzard with this garbage, want to defend their communities and their homes from this insanity. It could happen. Twitch. It could happen. We could have a popular front government here. We could have a popular front government here. A lot of work has to be done. A lot of work has to be done. It took decades and decades of organizing before they had such a government. They had anything that could take power in Venezuela, right? I mean, you know, the communists of Venezuela talked about all the community struggles they were involved in. You know, it took decades before they were able to have a popular front government where Hugo Chavez took office. And look, but folks, I'm optimistic. Can you see an ad in the New York Times for Fusion City? I can. I can very easily see an ad in the New York Times for Fusion City, signed by top scientists and, you know, engineers from MIT and all that. I can see an ad in the New York Times for the Center for Political Innovation at Fusion City, right? I can see it happening. I can see it happening, right? Furthermore, I can see AOC. Thank you, Piano Man. I can see AOC. I can see the squad being forced to throw up their hands and endorse Sandino Zapata. I can see them happen. I can see it happen, right? I can see it. You know, I can see them say, they'll be reluctant. Oh, no, no. You know, but I can see enough of their constituents coming to them and saying, hey, I just heard this amazing, proposal from the Center for Political Innovation to Economic Development. And I can see AOC throwing up her hands and saying, okay, fine. I'm for Sandino Zapata. I can see it happening. And when you push the ball, right? When you get the ball rolling, so to speak, things start to fall into order. If we can get the notion of Fusion City into the popular consciousness, we can get the notion of the Sandino Zapata economic corridor into the public consciousness. If we can actually get people to start thinking about socialism in our way and not in the way of all these phony bread tube grifters, right? You know, not Jabba the Vosh, rah, 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 we need rock our cooperatives. You know, not Skippy the Bear, who wants to degrow us into socialism and wants to drive us into so much poverty that we have socialism. You know, not any of that. But if we could actually get the city-building tendency of America to awaken, if we could actually get people to love their community and their country and their families and enough to start trying to build again, if we could get city-building socialism into the consciousness of the American people, if we could penetrate those libertarian circles where they believe in growth, but they also believe in radical individual psychopathy, anti-collectivism, Ayn Rand bullshit. We could penetrate the Jacobin bread tube universe and get them to start believing in humanity and growth and optimism and start being real anti-imperialists, right? If we could get to average Americans who have had it up to here and are ready to fight for their community, we could build, if we could do this, we could actually get the city building, suit socialist tendency going in the United States, right? We can be a think tank that starts an avalanche. I believe it can happen. I really do believe it can happen. But that depends on you, it depends on me, it depends on all of us. We need to make a commitment to making this happen. And I've spent a long time thinking about all of this, and I think it can happen, right? Fusion City now, Sandino Zapata Economic Corridor now. We need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action that will fight for working families. So out of the movement and to the masses. And on that note, folks, names and locations, I will call you out. I will call you out as I see you. Names and locations. Libya returning to socialism. Names and locations, folks. Names and locations. Names and locations. Kendall in San Diego. Cleveland Pirate Alex. Charles in Chicago. Beltway area Max the Sax. Fusion Socialism. There you go. Flushing, Queens. David in China. Cherokee Nation. Richie in Staten Island. Brazil. Wisconsin. Nassau County. Char Darling. Bosnia. Calgary, Canada. Lawrence Chu out in Albany, New York. Welcome, Lawrence. South Island, New Zealand. Dallas, Ricky. Ryan in Oakland. Massachusetts. Dylan Small is in Fusion City. Clydebank, James Graham. San Angelo, Solidarity. Tamara and Dario from Brooklyn. Joe Gale in Nassau County. Very good. Your city builders are here, says John Celeste. Damn right, damn right. Los Angeles, West Virginia, Mississippi, Government of Action, Nicholas Lynch, Fairhope, Alabama, Ocean Grove, New Jersey, Jenny Lynn in Cincinnati, Vosh's support for Rahava. Vosh, Rahava. Very good. All right. Vinicius in Brazil, Springfield, Missouri, Bermuda, Nashville, San Antonio, Leo from Mexico, Adelaide, Australia, Solidarity from California. All right, 70 eastbound, Lockport, Andy Finaro out in Maine. Welcome, Andy. San Francisco, Union County, New Jersey. Tom in Pennsylvania. There you go. Breaker Island. Patty in Joshua Tree. Welcome, Patty. Boris in Asheville, North Carolina. San Diego, Los Angeles, California. Ryan from Canada, Ontario. Detroit. Natalie in Maryland. More Fusion City graphics to come. You're doing a great job, Natalie. Sao Paulo, Brazil. Bendigo, Australia. David Fox, good friend of the program. Welcome, David. Texas. Tony in Oregon Coast. Ontario, Canada. Fred from Alameda County. Great speech, says Tony from Tasmania. Thank you, Tony from Tasmania. Right? Cab. I get his overall point to look presentable. Kaushik from Kolkata, India. Sergio in Australia. Perth, Australia. Jabba from Langley. Ha ha ha. Temple City. All right. Los Angeles, Auckland, New Zealand. San Diego. David Ionte gang. Arizona, Arthur Porter. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good friend of the program. All right. Venezuela, we love you, Caleb. Well, I love you too, Venezuela. Visiting that country was an amazing experience. Long live Bolivarian socialism. Mohsen from Iran. Little Falls, New Jersey. Dust James out in North Carolina is with us. Good stuff. Very good. Montreal, California. Madison, Wisconsin. Manhattan. Boston, Max Hessen, very, very, very good. Jabba from Synthetic Leftville, ha ha ha. Memphis, Fort Lauderdale, very, very good. Very, very good. Anyone else? Jeffersonville, Indiana. Looking forward this Tuesday night stream. Well, here you are. All right. All right, Sydney, Australia, Nate Pano. Alan in Chicago, welcome. Nate in Chicago. Andre, good friend of the program. I think, Andre, you can be a mod. All right, you're now a mod, Andre. Um, and you're out in Tallahassee, Portland, Pomona, California. Very, very good. Very, very, very good. All right. Anybody else? Anybody else? We love you, Caleb. You're the best, says Leonardo Moya. Well, love you too. Love you too. Hey, we're having a great time here. This is awesome. It's an awesome evening, even though I'm sweating a lot, but that's okay. And people think because I have a white pillow behind me that I'm in a hospital, which I am not. I am in my bedroom in my lovely Brooklyn apartment. But hey, what can you do? What can you do, folks? What can you do? All right. All right. So now, everyone be sure to hit the like button. Oh, good books on Syria and Latin America. Books. Syria, Latin America. Be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. Be sure to hit the notifications bell. And yeah, be sure to do that. And I will continue. To read, to answer super chat questions. Alrighty. Violence in the Mexican midterms. Well, look, the fact that they're calling AMLO a dictator is a really good sign. You know, AMLO, it's a Popular Front coalition. He's in alliance with the communists. He's in alliance with other left-wing parties. And they don't like him. I mean, the ruling class of the United States doesn't like him. It was really Trump getting elected that kind of, pushed him over the edge. They stole the election from him a couple times, but he was able to win because of Trump and the distance that created between the United States and Mexico. And, really, AMLO, I mean, Mexico's not a socialist country by any means. There's a lot of disagreement there. It's a left progressive government at this point, but they haven't been able to do much, right? They've been kind of had their hands tied, and there's a lot of division in the Mexican state. That's pretty clear. And it's also very clear the United States didn't want him to win this time, and that there's a faction in the Mexican state that is with AMLO, and there's factions that are strongly against him. Current Argentine government. All right, very good. And so there you go. All righty. Okie dokie. Okay, infantilism in Western culture. Now, I assume you're referring to, like, people behaving in an infantile way. You're not referring to anything like R-rated or something. You're referring to, like, people behaving in an infantile way. Castillo planning to join ALBA. I feel like part of what's going on in the United States right now, and thank you, Eduardo, for your super chat. Part of what's going on in the United States, I've observed this. Okay, so there's a couple layers to this. First of all, I noticed this when I was finishing college, that many of my friends were not living on their own. Now, I was never going to live at home after I went to college. That wouldn't have been an option because I did not get along with my family enough, and it was not going to happen, okay? But a lot of my friends, after I graduated from college, went back and lived at home. Why? Because they got a job. They had jobs, but they were stuck living at home because they couldn't make enough money. And when I would visit my friends in my hometown, a lot of them were working in, fast food, or working in service sector jobs. They weren't getting paid very much money. Their pay wasn't very, very good. And to pass the time, they were playing a lot of video games, and they were watching a lot of TV, and they were very, very frustrated and angry. And I knew many, many people that I went to school with. And it was funny because it's like they had finished college. They had student debt to pay off. They were miserable. But even though they had graduated from college, and thank you, Andy, even though they had graduated from college, even though they did everything you're supposed to do, they were not able to really have the dignity of adulthood, right? They were stuck in this state of being almost a permateen. Right? And I used to talk about this with people. I'd be like, it's like our generation has been cursed. We're permateens, right? Because it's like, they're permanent teenagers, right? If you're living at home and you're, and it's like, and again, the video game culture, the watching a lot of TV, and a lot of this comes with this kind of things that used to be associated with teenagers, like playing video games, like, being into Star Trek and Star Wars and anime and stuff like that has now become widespread, but it kind of fits the fact that the life that many adults from our generation have is the life of a teenager. right? That the dignity of adulthood, right? It used to be, yeah, if you're a teenager and you're into video games, you're a teenager, you're into anime, you're a teenager, you work in fast food, that's just, hey, people do that, right? But after college, you were expected to grow up and be a man, and, and be a woman, but it doesn't happen now. There's an economic component to it. It's not that these people don't want that, and they want to make it out like this. And this is the problem with Fox News and Jordan Peterson and all that crap, is that they want to make it out like, well, these kids never grew up. No, they never grew up. No one yelled at them and get yourself together, young man. No. I mean, a lot of people my age and younger would very much like to live on their own, very much like to get married, very much like to have children. But the economy has not made that a possibility, right? And when people don't have the possibility and don't have the opportunity, right? And their life, living with their parents, working a low-wage job, when their life is like that, the kind of things that they will be interested in will be like that. They'll be more interested in things, when you're living the life of a teenager, things that appeal to a teenager appeal to you, right? No question about that. And so, that has developed. That has definitely developed. And again, it's not a question of people not being punished harshly enough. It's not a question of people not being mean enough. I mean, the culture has changed and all of that, but in a lot of ways that's good. I mean, I'm sorry, folks. I will never forget when Fred Rogers, when Mr. Rogers died. Do you remember this? The children's host, Can You Say I'm Special? When Mr. Rogers died, I saw Fox News talking about Mr. Rogers' death and saying that because he told children that they were special just the way they are, that was socialist propaganda because it meant they didn't have to work hard in order to be special. And I saw that and I was just like, really? 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 I watched this and I was like, are you serious? Are you serious, right? What was Mr. Rogers supposed to say? And remember, kids, if you work hard, you could be special. No. I mean, what in the world? What in the world? I mean, it's like, a lot of these right-wing folks, they can't comprehend. It's like, again, the solution to mass shootings is more guns, right? The solution to problems in any country in the Middle East is more invasions and more killing. The solution to the border is arming ICE and intensifying the border patrol. And it's like they can't imagine a solution that involves being nice to people and getting along with people. It's like they cannot comprehend that. The solution to everything is more violence and more punishment. And, it's like, and it's interesting because there's a class dynamic to this. Let's be real, okay? Look, the consequences for working class people are much harsher than wealthier people, great example of that. Great example of this. All right. And John Hinckley shot Ronald Reagan, right? This was a mentally ill individual who shot the President of the United States, right? John Hinckley, a man who shot Ronald Reagan, he shot the President of the United States. He was found not guilty for reasons of insanity, went to a mental hospital instead of prison, and now he's out of the mental hospital and he's got a YouTube channel. Right? He's on YouTube. You can watch him playing his songs. He's playing songs on YouTube. Why? Why is that? Why? Because he's rich. He's rich. He's rich. I mean, look at it. I mean, his father was an exec of a Texas oil company. He's rich. So if you're rich, look, if a poor person had shot Ronald Reagan, they would have electrocuted him, right? But he was from a wealthy family, a wealthy Texas oil family, and he was crazy, and he was a songwriter and was obsessed with Jodie Foster, and there's also some conspiracy theories, but regardless, he was from a very, very wealthy family. And even, you look at it, right? The fact that he has a YouTube channel. I was reading about this the other day. His YouTube channel, I kid you not, his YouTube channel was, was set up, and he like went to court for the right to have a YouTube channel, right? His family's rich enough that, like, of course they told him, yeah, well, you can get out of the mental hospital, but you ain't allowed to have a YouTube channel. So his family got him a lawyer, like 30 years after, how many years has it been? 50 years, 40 years after he kills, tries to kill the president of the United States, right? He gets a YouTube channel because his family got him a lawyer, paid the lawyer to go to court to fight for the right of a guy who tried to kill the president of the United States to have, to have a YouTube channel. That is unbelievable, right? I mean, you want to say, like, wow, aren't we a forgiving society? You can try to kill the president of the United States, you can kill a Secret Service member, and you can get out of jail and have your own YouTube channel. No. If you're rich in the United States, if you're from a billionaire family, yes, that is certainly possible. But, I mean, it is really unbelievable, right? That, the consequences for people that are very, very, very wealthy are nowhere near what the consequences are for working people, right? Computer rev and consequences, right? Video games, right? And, that's just the reality, right? If John Hinckley had been black, right, he would have died the day he tried to kill Ronald Reagan, right? He would have tried to kill Ronald Reagan, and then several bullets would have gone right through his body, and John Hinckley would have been a historical footnote. But John Hinckley was white. He didn't die at the scene of his crime. And so they managed at his trial to convince a jury that he was a poor, mentally insane person. He didn't know what he was doing, whatever. And so based on that, instead of going to prison, they sent him to a mental hospital. Now he's out of the mental hospital, and he's gotten permission to have his own YouTube channel. And, that shows that, look, the consequences for poor people and the consequences for very, very, very rich people in the United States of America are very different. Are very, 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 very different. Very, very different. Let's just be real about it. The consequences for poor people and the consequences for rich people, but there's many other examples of this, right? They talk about growing up, and, kids get into fights. I got into a fight when I was in school. I admit it, right? I got into a fight. I got suspended from school for a week, right? I had to go to this, because I got into a fist fight, I had to go to this, and they even had this, like, out-of-school program where it's like if you're suspended from school, you can go to this program. So I had to sit in the YMCA and have detention for a week. And then during lunch, they had, like, Christian pastors talk at you, right? And that was, whatever. Well, if I had gone to an inner-city school, right? If I'd gone to an inner-city school, a low-income school in an urban center, there's a very good chance I could have a criminal record right now because I'd gotten into a fight. I could have gone to juvenile hall. But because, I'm white, and because, I wasn't from the suburbs, I was from a rural area, but because the area I was in, we didn't have problems with people bringing knives and guns to school and such, the consequences for my getting into a fight, they were, it was a big deal to me, and it was a big deal to my parents and everybody in town. Nobody in town talked about anything for a week, it seemed like, anything else for a week, it seemed, but after that, my life went on, right? And that the consequences for poor people tend to be much more extreme, and that people in the working class tend to see, like, for example, the military, right? A number of people I went to high school went to the military. I know people whose graduating class, nobody went to the military. That's called a difference. That's a difference, right? The military was a big part of my education. We were always having military recruiters come to the school. We were always having assemblies where we talked about the military. Right? There was a lot of military stuff going on when I was in school. That's part of working class life. Well, people who grow up in affluent and wealthier neighborhoods, the military is not a big part of their life. And so, things that, this is why, when we talk about Trump supporters, right? And we talk about, we look at the right wing and that they're much more into consequences and violence and punishment and the military. there's a class dynamic to that. The world is a lot less forgiving to working class people. That's my point, okay? The world is a lot less forgiving to working class people. There's a lot more punishment in working class life. There's a lot more military stuff in working class life. And middle class folks have a different existence. And so they, there's an element of that. What are we talking about here? I'm sorry, I'm rambling about all kinds of stuff. I don't even remember what we're talking. Infantilism in Western culture. So wow, I bet you didn't know we were going to go there, Chaya, did you? But anyway, my point is that the next generation have been robbed of a future, right? They've been robbed of a future. And in a lot of ways, to kind of gloss over that, they're encouraging them to just kind of be happy like children, right? And they encourage them to, look, just be a happy little child. Play your video games, look at your phone. Let us dazzle you and don't think too much. Because underlying it, there's a resentment. If you have it in your head that you're an adult, you're going to want to live like an adult, right? Right? If you have it in your head that you should be an adult, you're going to demand the right to live as an adult. And they don't want that. They absolutely don't want that. And so, yes, I believe our generation is being actively encouraged to think of themselves as permanent teenagers, to think of themselves as children. Absolutely. Right? I think that's happening. I think that is absolutely happening. And that, yes, there is a big encouragement of look, and I'm sorry, right? In the socialist movement, there has been way too much of this. Way too much of this. Oh my God. The NGO culture, right? In the socialist groups, socialism is a very adult thing. I'm always talking about suit socialism, socialism, ideology and all that, but I am the NGO-cialists, right? The NGO-cialists. Now, if you hear me clap once, if you hear me clap twice, if you hear me clap 3 times, and now we're all going to talk about what our favorite hot dog is, okay? And we're going to go around. Now, John, what is your favorite hot dog? Now, Jimmy, what is your favorite hot dog? Oh, no, we're not going to talk about, that's so cute that you're interested in Marxism and theory and ideology. Here, we're about listening to other people and learning to interact with each other. We are not interested in communism, even though this is a communist group. Instead, we are gonna, if you hear me clap once, if you hear me clap twice, I'm so sick of NGO bullshit. I never want to hear that stuff again, right? As the Center for Political Innovation moves ahead, we will have, group bonding activities and we will do stuff, but it will never become kindergarten, okay? There will be no kindergarten communism. There shall be no kindergarten communism under my domain. I decree as the director of the Center for Political Innovation that the infantilization of socialism stops here. We will be adults in this movement. We will grow. We are going to read Marx and Lenin until we can't look at another word. It is going to be intense. It is going to be intense. I'm just kidding. But seriously, kindergarten communism. I really don't like kindergarten communism. I really, really don't like kindergarten communism. I really don't, right? And again, capitalism is trying to infantilize the next generation of working people in order to get them to think that they are not worthy of the dignity of adulthood. And that has got to be stopped. That has absolutely got to be stopped. Yes, it's okay to talk about your feelings. Yes, it's okay to share some tough experiences. That's important, right? It's important to make people feel comfortable. It's important to make people feel like they can loosen up and open up. But the infantilization, look, I graduated from kindergarten a long, long time ago. And if I want to go do kindergarten, I can do kindergarten. But I don't want to do kindergarten because I'm interested in getting a movement together that people can feel proud of, that people can feel like they have dignity, to get people to feel as if they can be empowered, they can be strong, they can be smart, they can be intelligent. I am for suit socialism. I am for constructive socialism. We need a government of action to fight for working families. Next question. So there. How do we convince oil-rich countries to build Fusion City? Well, I don't think there's a problem with that, because you'll notice one of the countries that is the biggest supporter of fusion energy is Russia. And Russia is all about oil and gas. They sell oil and gas like crazy, but they have called for international cooperation around fusion energy. And you know what other country is hugely supportive of fusion energy research? Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran. And in fact, I went to the fusion energy research facility in New Jersey, where Dr. Eric Lerner, the Marxist physicist, the guy's a Marxist, a communist Marxist physicist. He wrote a book called The Big Bang Never Happened. He's got the Marxian critique of the new physics, but he runs a huge fusion energy research facility in New Jersey, right? And he collaborated with a laboratory in Iran, right? And Iran has all kinds of fusion energy research, even though they're an oil exporting country. So I don't think oil exporting countries have any problem with fusion energy research, right? I don't think they do, right? I really don't think they do. So I don't think it's difficult at all, right? Russia, China, Iran, Venezuela, these countries are already in favor of fusion energy. It's the big oil monopolies that see that it would spell the end of their dominion over the world economy that are opposed to it. Future collaborations and appearances. Well, there's going to be a couple big talks at the end of this month that are going to go up on the web, so stay tuned for that. There'll be some big talks I'm giving to a group of folks. Don't want to say too much about that, but that's coming up, so keep your eye out for that. There'll be some mega monologues, so to speak. That's coming up. I'm open to talking to people. There's a couple people, all the time people are reaching out to me. Do you want me on your show? You want me to talk, and I will. I've gone on George Galloway's show a number of times. I'm sure I'll be back on again soon. And, I'm always on Sputnik Radio with, Garland Nixon. I just went this Saturday. I was on Sirius XM with Dr. Wilmer Leon to discuss the Kamala Harris book, and it's been selling. I mean, my goodness, every day I get on there. Ever since then, every day it's like, I look at the graphs they're showing me. People have been buying the Kamala Harris book, even though she's been vice president for a long time. I mean, people listen to Dr. Wilmer Leon, and they listen to Sirius XM, and, my sales have vastly gone up as a result of going on that show. So, but yeah, in the future, look, I may be debating some people. There's some possible debates coming up. There are there's a lot in the works. Look, I'm generally open. To collaborating with people. I don't want to be set up, okay? I don't like being set up. If people set me up, I just, that's the end of that. But, for the most part, look, a couple of weeks ago, this fellow, who's like a conservative Roman Catholic, whatever, he had me on his program, right? I didn't know who he was, didn't care. Look, he wanted me on his show. I came on and we talked for 2 hours. 2 hours we talked, and it's up there. I think you watched the stream I did with, I don't even remember what his name was, but I went on there, and look, we talked for 2 hours. I think the guy's like a Duginist. He's actually a Duginist. People say I'm a Duginist. I am not a Duginist. I'm a Marxist. But this guy was actually a Duginist, and I didn't even know that before I went on there. I just thought it was about being Latino or something. But, I went on a Duginist Latino podcast the other day. I didn't know that's what it was. Well, I went on there because they had me on, so I went on there, whatever, look, I went on with Jackson Hinkle. He's got a great show. Jackson Hinkle is amazing. I've been on Convo Couch. They're awesome. I've been with Graham Elwood before. That's been tremendous. Graham Elwood is great. I've debated people. Look, generally, you reach out to me, send me an email, calebmaupin@gmail.com. Send me a Twitter message, and I'll go on your podcast. I will. That's generally how it works. That's what I'll do. So, you want to have me on there? I'll do it. I will happily do it, right? Katie Halper, she follows me on Twitter. If she wanted me on her show, I would do it. Frank Analysis, that's been great. The Dive with Jackson Hinkle. Frank Analysis is tremendous. He's awesome. I've been on his show. Nico House, I've been on with Nico House before. I'll do it. I'll do it. Generally, unless I think, unless I think someone's really trying to cause me a problem or set me up or something, look, I'll generally go on their show. Obnoxious Anarchist has reached out. I said yes, and then I haven't heard back yet. So, again, the door is open. Jimmy Dore, he's said a number of times he would have me on. Waiting to hear from him any day, Jimmy. Just give me a call. I would happily go on your show. Big fan. Big fan. Was listening to him earlier tonight talking about Kamala Harris, and I was cracking up. It was really funny. So there you go. Yeah, I mean, that's how these things work. So, that's how these things work. I will do anything. Look, folks, a lot of people will ask me, like, Caleb, are you going to run for office? No, I'm not. I don't see myself playing that role, right? I see myself building the role of a think tank, spreading constructive, progressive, socialist ideas to the world, trying to bring the scientific Marxist understanding that I have to the world, with a think tank, with education, writing books and such. I don't see myself running for office, but you never know. Never say never, right? Things could change. But honestly, I don't see myself running for office. What I do see is that our unique understanding of socialism, right, that really gives an ideological coherence to what a lot of other people will say. A lot of these other podcasts, you can call them alt-left, right? That's the sea we're swimming in. People call it the alt-left. People that are left-wing but actually anti-imperialist. People that are left-wing but critical of cancel culture. People that are left-wing but, God forbid, they're questioning some of the sacred cows on the left, and they actually want to get to the working class, and they don't hate China, and they don't hate Russia. That alt-left universe, right? The universe, that universe, in that universe, look, there are many different voices, but there's a lot of confusion, right? Because it's very hard. People don't know what to believe and all of that. Well, I've written books like City Builders and Vandals in Our Age. We've got the textbook, We Are City Builders. And I give ideological coherence to all of this. I make it all make sense, right? If you just read classical Marxism, if you're still thinking like it's the Cold War, nothing makes sense anymore. Right? And I saw that when I went to Iran, when I went to Venezuela. If you have the Cold War narrative in your head, right? If you have the Cold War narrative, the Cold War understanding of politics in your head, right? If you have that narrative in your head, nothing makes sense anymore, right? Socialism, capitalism, imperial, what's going on here? What's going on here? It doesn't make any sense. Well, I have given this ideological coherence, right? We are city builders, and the city building tendency, the city builder understanding of things, gives coherence and makes logical sense out of what's happening in the world today. It will give you the ability to understand what is actually happening, okay? That's what I have to offer, right? I mean, I'm not flying to every country in the world. I do travel a lot, and, I'll travel again, I'm sure, but I'm not on the ground at every, epic political battle. What I am able to do is give ideological coherence. And people it's not just all over the United States. I mean, hundreds of copies of this have been sold, and it's not just in the United States people are reading my work. People are reading my work in Venezuela. People are reading my work in Russia. People are reading my work in China. People are reading my work in many countries around the world, in Europe, in Switzerland, and in Germany, and there's people translating my books into Italian. And look, I am giving ideological coherence to the very confusing political period that we are in. That's what I am doing, and that's what I can offer. And that's the role that I can play. And I can revive the city-building tendency and my unique city-building suit socialist understanding of politics. So there you go. There you go. All right, Aristide. Aristide was the leader of Haiti. He was a Roman Catholic priest who was the leader of Haiti. He was getting friendly to Cuba. He was standing up to neoliberalism. And the CIA in the United States removed him from office, and they shoved him onto a plane and flew him to Africa. And Ramsey Clark, former U.S. Attorney General, who I had the honor of working with, got on a plane to the Congo and represented him as his attorney. It was a coup that happened in 2004. The elected president of Haiti was overthrown by the U.S. government. Jean-Bertrand Aristide, a Catholic priest who was becoming a socialist, was friendly with Hugo Chavez, friendly with Castro. He had been backed by the United States in the early 90s, but then had been overthrown. And it's a complicated situation, but he was moving in an anti-imperialist direction and a populist direction. And as a result of that, he was removed and removed from Haiti. And that wasn't good for Haiti. Haiti's been in a lot of chaos ever since. Leftists who put ID poll before growth and development. Well, look, here's the thing, right? Ultimately, socialism is all about growth and development. Socialism is a constructive ideology about building and marching ahead. But that said, a lot of people, especially younger folks, they don't know anything different, right? All they've ever known from left-wing politics is left-wing politics as cancel culture. Left-wing politics as, who's a racist and a sexist this week, right? And they don't know it's about anything other than that. All they know is that is left-wing politics, as the synthetic left. That's all they know. So, I would want to educate these people and engage with them, right? I mean, it's not about insulting them. It's not about, and again, you don't win people over by insulting them, right? If you just say to people, F you, you're wrong, you've accomplished very, very little, right? That a lot of what is effective in persuading people is being able to patiently engage, to listen to them, to really listen to them, and really listen to them. That's really important. Listening to people you disagree with is far more important than talking to them, right? Talking to them is important, but until you really understand their perspective, you can't really persuade them. So, the ability to listen to people you disagree with and put your assumptions aside, look them in the face and hear the words come out of their mouth. But not just hear the words come out of their mouth, but look for what's behind the words. Don't just hear the words, but hear the feelings behind those words. Look at how their eyes move when they speak. Look at how the tone of voice changes, and hear the words that they say. But not just hear the words, hear the feelings behind those words. And put your assumptions aside and just listen. Just listen to the person who disagrees with you. Hear what they say. Hear the feelings behind those words. Let them know that you value them enough to listen to them, number one. And number two, actually listen to them to the point that you actually know what they're saying. You're not arguing with a straw man. You're not arguing with a caricature. You're actually arguing with what they actually say. And your ability to persuade them will be far, far more if you do this. That's really important. Look, not everyone you want to persuade. Not everyone you want to persuade. But those who you do want to persuade, it's very important to listen to them. Very important to listen to them. Look, if someone's into ID poll and they're worked up, I had somebody message me the other day, and they said, Caleb, why do you follow Jordan Peterson on social media? And, they sent me this big, long screed. They were angry at me for following Jordan Peterson. And I replied, I said, I hate Jordan Peterson. I can't stand him. He's awful and anti-communist and all of that. But he puts out a lot of anti-communist garbage that I want to respond to. So I follow and hear what he has to say. It was an interesting exchange, right? And this person, I'm sure they don't agree with a lot of things I said, but they approached me and asked, why would I dare follow Jordan Peterson? I gave them an answer. Well, who knows? Who knows? Right? And that. Maybe that was a step forward. Maybe not, right? Not everyone is persuadable. Not everyone is recruitable. Not everyone is capable of being won. But a big part of persuading people is letting them know they should be listened to. Now, someone advised me about swing sets. Yeah, wasn't there some, RBG, right? Maoist Red Guard, or Black Red Guard, BRG, the BRG. BRG, Black Red Guard. He went on, didn't he go on a show and he blew up somebody's swing set or something? Or I don't know. All right, whatever. He blocked me. He's not interested in engaging with me. So there you go. Like I said, that appearance that he did on Dr. Phil is going to be remembered as one of the most epic moments in all American television, right? I mean, you know, I mean, it was epic. I mean, you just watch that segment. It's just, I mean, it's like, I'm surprised. Well, didn't it win an Emmy? I think it won an Emmy, didn't it? Didn't it win an Emmy? I mean, it had to have won like a daytime Emmy or something, because it's like his neighbors thought he blew up their swing set. And he said they were racist and he didn't blow up their swing set. And they argued about it. And they had like an argument. And Dr. Phil was there now going, now everybody, let's calm down. Let's calm down. I'm Dr. Phil. Let's calm down. Now, you say you didn't blow up the swing set. And they said you did blow up the swing set. I mean that's bad. It was epic. I mean, it was just wow. I mean, there's a book called How TV Changed America's Mind. How TV changed America's mind. And I think there should be a chapter about that moment in American television in the book. I mean, there has to be. I mean, because that moment, I mean, America was not the same the day after that aired. I mean, I'm having too much fun here. Part of the work of getting to the masses, is listening to them, says David Fox. And you are absolutely right. You are absolutely right, David Fox. From the masses to the masses. That's what the little red book says. The mass line. The mass line. From the masses to the masses. Leading while learning and learning while leading. Nate Rye says, tons of respect for you, Caleb. Keep it up. Love the great work. Well, thank you, Nate. Much respect to you for sending me a super chat. So there you go. Facebook anti-populism. I mean, I don't know. It's your Facebook, right? You're the individual. It's your Facebook, your identity against the world. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of anti-populism on Facebook, but I mean, whatever. Social media is not good for socialism. I'll just be honest, right? I mean, it reminds everybody of what they disagree with other people about. People get into little nitpicky fights and hate each other. And social media hasn't been good for socialism. It's not been good for socialism. I'll just be honest about that. All right. How would history be different if Lincoln was never assassinated? Well, it's interesting because Reconstruction, it was probably one of the greatest and most hopeful times in U.S. history. Land redistribution went on. The poor whites and recently freed slaves were aligning with each other against the big landowners. And, you read W.E.B. Du Bois, his book Black Reconstruction is amazing. Reconstruction was not, the movie Gone with the Wind, the movie Birth of a Nation, that's awful propaganda. It was not like that at all. Reconstruction was a very, very positive moment in U.S. history. It was a very positive moment in U.S. history. But there's been a huge effort to pretend that that's not the case, to tell another version of events. And part of that has been saying, oh, if Lincoln had lived, Lincoln would have been nicer and kinder to the South, stuff like that. But then again, there are some people who say Lincoln was would have kept doing. I mean, you don't know what Lincoln would have done if he had lived, right? Lincoln would have come out of the Civil War very, very, very powerful. That's pretty clear, right? He would have been a strong man. He would have been capable of doing a lot, right? That kind of like Roosevelt, right? Roosevelt, would have come out of World War II as very, very powerful. And that's one thing that our ruling class here in the United States is terrified of. They're always terrified of a strong man. They don't want there to ever be an American Hugo Chavez or an American Gaddafi or an American Saddam Hussein or an American Stalin. They don't want that. They're terrified of that, right? And whenever we have a president who's looking like they could be a popular strongman, whenever that happens, you will see opposition, right? Because Abraham Lincoln and Roosevelt were both capable of being, left-wing strongmen, and they did not live, did they? There you go, right? I think, was Roosevelt assassinated? Well, it looks like his death came from natural causes. There's some who speculate about this or that, but it looks like his death came from natural causes. Lincoln definitely was assassinated, right? The actor John Wilkes Booth assassinated Abraham Lincoln. And that whole thing is very, very strange. But, again, was there a wider conspiracy to kill Abraham Lincoln? Probably not, but it's possible. I mean, I haven't looked into the specific details. Who would Marx have endorsed in 2020? I don't know. I don't know. As an honest Marxist, I looked at the 2020 elections. I said, I don't know. Right? Biden was certainly better in terms of managing the economy, and is certainly a more competent leader. We've seen that so far. But at the same time, Biden is much more as effective as an imperialist, right? So there's that, right? And it's complicated, right? And we shall see. We shall see. I mean, at this point, I don't know. I don't know who would have been better. I mean, so far Biden's doing a better job than Trump did. I'll tell you that much. But it's only been what? I mean, he's been president. Has he been president 6 months yet? I mean, we don't even know. We don't even know, right? I mean, he's certainly talking better than Trump did. I will say that first State of the Union, I agreed with much more of what he said, but I thought it was particularly dangerous that it was tied in with imperialism. At the same time, there is some scary stuff on the horizon. Kamala Harris is a nightmare. I mean, look, I'm nervous about, global events, and I really don't like this pivot of anti-China and this, so there's a lot to be concerned about. Look, I think right now things are unstable enough in the country that the approach of the Biden administration is just to stabilize things. But we'll see what happens after they've got things to be a little bit stabilized. I feel like Biden is the stabilizing guy, and Kamala is the extremist, right? She's the one who's come in with an agenda. Biden is there to stabilize things. Kamala is there to carry out whatever agenda is to be carried out, and that is where we should be very afraid. But that says, who knows? Kamala Harris could be an amazing president. I mean, look, based on her character, I don't have a very positive assessment of her, right? And I think she's capable of great evil, and she's aligned with very, very evil people. But that said, right, weird things happen, folks. Weird things happen sometimes. And maybe Kamala will become president, and the Trump opposition will be so against her, and who knows? Who knows how the balance of forces? The important thing to remember is that history is not made by individuals. It's made by dynamics and class forces, right? Individuals can be key, but when individuals are key, it's because they give voice to mass aspirations and such. So, Kamala is an empty vessel, right? She is at the whim of the people who manipulate her and know how to push her buttons. And if the people who manipulate her and push her buttons are maneuvered and forced into a progressive position, she might become a great president. I might be forced to eat my words and regret all the awful things I've said about her. That said, I really, really think there's a very, 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 very slim chance of that happening. But never say never, right? Again, it's about the balance of forces. It's about the balance of forces. All right. Next question. Is the DPRK trying to have something like Vietnam? Yes, they clearly are. They want to have market reforms. They've made that abundantly clear. They need foreign investment. Yes. And that was the whole point of the talks. And, they gave Kim Jong-un, they gave him a flash drive. Come on now. I mean, yes. Would I ever consider going on Twitch? Yeah, why not? I mean, yeah, I'm open to it. I haven't done it yet. I know it can be a little... I've built up my presence on YouTube, but I'd be open to going on Twitch, sure. All right, Libya returning to socialism, not anytime soon. Not anytime soon. I know that, Saif al-Islam Gaddafi is very popular and has a lot of support. But at the same time, the country's, it's shattered. I mean, there's two governments. There's the General Haftar, and it's a mess. Vosh's support for Rahava. Well, look, not just him. I have said this many times. Right? I've said this many, many times, okay? I've said this many times. It must be said that, okay, all right, right? That I am not going to denounce the Kurds and their claim to statehood, right? The Kurdish people are a nation. And as a nation, they aspire for statehood. And I am not going to throw them under the bus and say, you're not a nation, you don't have a right to statehood, F you Kurds, because they collaborated with the United States, which they have done. I'm not going to do that, right? We know Fidel Castro briefly got some support from the U.S. government, and then, obviously they regretted it. But, sometimes, in China, there's a whole history with Mao and Soviet social imperialism and all that, and the Gang of Four. Look, just, I'm not ready to throw the Kurds under the bus. But, big but, how does anybody who thinks that they're an anti-imperialist, who thinks they're a socialist or a revolutionary, look themselves in the face when the only force in the world they can support is one that's aligned with American imperialism? Okay? How? I don't get it. How in the world? Right? I mean, people, oh, we can't support Assad, he's a dictator. Oh, we can't support China, that's fascist. Oh, we can't support Venezuela, that's not real socialism. Can't support Nicaragua, can't support Cuba, can't support Vietnam, but, oh, the Kurds I like. Really? So, you can't support any anti-imperialists, but the one leftist faction that's getting guns from the CIA and openly admits that they're getting guns from the CIA, that's who you can support? Really? 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 I don't understand how these people look themselves in the face. It's like they don't know what anti-imperialism even means at that point. Look, the best moment was when John McCain's daughter was on The View, and she was so upset about Trump not supporting the Kurds. She said, they were fighting for America. They were fighting for America. And I thought, I thought they were fighting for anarcho-syndicalism. I thought they were fighting for the teachings of, oh, goodness gracious, what was the anarchist thinker that they were, I thought they were fighting for Peter Kropotkin. Geez, I thought they were fighting for true social, for Murray Bookchin, right? I thought they were fighting for Murray Bookchin. And Meghan McCain, the daughter of John McCain, is screaming, they were fighting for America! They were fighting for America! That's funny, Did that happen when Mao died? Did like people on American TV go, he was fighting for America? I don't think so. Did that happen when, Che Guevara died? Did people sit there and go, he was fighting for America? I don't think so. I'm not too positive on the Kurds, but I'm not going to throw them under the bus, right? Again, I'm not going to throw them under the bus. I am not going to throw them under the bus. All right. Books about Syria and Latin America. Well, I will recommend on Syria, Stephen Gowans. Dr. Stephen Gowans of Canada has written an amazing book about Syria and the struggle of Syria against imperialism. I learned so much from it. Dr. Stephen Gowans' book on Syria gets my approval. When it comes to Latin America, Dr. Chigarello Mar, he wrote a book called We Created Chavez. That's very good. I would recommend that book as well. What else? There's a number. I mean, my goodness, Tariq Ali. I believe he wrote Pirates of the Caribbean, which was a book about, the various anti-imperialist governments in the Caribbean. There's a lot of good stuff that's been published over the years, about, you can read Open Veins of Latin America. Oh, my goodness. Ramiro read my mind. Open Veins of Latin America, which is a good history of all of that. My goodness, there's a number of very good texts. But yeah, on Syria, I would recommend. I would also recommend Bush in Babylon, which is, it's Tariq Ali and his history of like Baathism and Arab socialism in the Middle East. And I would recommend that. There's a number of good texts out there. So there you go. Alrighty. Current Argentine government. Well, look, the free marketeers were in there, and they were destroying Argentina. The IMF, and they were just destroying the economy. They kept saying, oh, if we just go, socialism has ruined everything, but if we implement free market reforms, it'll make everything better. Well, it didn't, right? Argentina's economy under the free market stuff was just wrecked. And so now the left is back in power. So there you go. Marta Harnacker, she's very good. She's written about the history of 21st century, the theory of 21st century socialism. She's very, very good. So there you go. Castillo planning to join ALBA. Well, look, Castillo has a very good agenda, right? He's fighting for working people. He's building a progressive movement. Look, it ain't over until it's over, right? It ain't over until it's over, as they say. But I'm very excited about Pedro Castillo, very excited about it. Next question is the computer revolution and consequences video games. Well, look, a lot of people enjoy playing video games, and hey, it's a hobby, right? I don't play video games mainly because my parents didn't let me play video games. They didn't want me to have a Nintendo or whatever when I was a kid, and so I didn't. And I in a way, I mean, I see with some people it becomes kind of a hobby and kind of an addiction. So it's probably, in my case, it's good. But I don't moralize it. I don't think it's wrong to play video games. I don't think that, oh, why are you playing video games? I will say one thing that someone pointed out to me that I think is hilarious is that one thing that girlfriends generally hate about their boyfriends is when their boyfriends discuss video games. And I thought that was kind of amusing, right? That, one of my old friends was telling me at his job, he worked with a lot of young women who would talk about their boyfriends. And all of their biggest pet peeve was whenever their boyfriends played video games, right? That when women are dating a guy, the last thing the women ever want to hear about is their boyfriend playing video games, right? They want to think of their boyfriend as like a father of children, a responsible man who's gonna, and when they hear about, a boyfriend, playing video games, they just get very upset, which I think is interesting, right? I mean, that's probably a stereotype. There's probably some women out there who just delighted to hear that their boyfriends play video games. But I remember hearing that and thinking, huh, right? But yeah, but there you go. I mean, look, I just don't play enough video games. I don't play video games. So I just really can't comment on it. I really can't. And again, if you're able to play video games, but also have a healthy social life, I mean, why? I mean, look, there's a lot of people who are able to drink responsibly, right? I don't drink alcohol, but there are many people who go out with their friends and they have a beer and they're fine. Good for you, right? There are many people who, there's many people. I mean, look, there are things people do that may not be the most productive thing in the world, to just chill out and relax. And I should learn to do more of that. Folks, I'll be real with you, right? I am a workaholic. I am constantly writing, constantly streaming, constantly, I never quit. And it's a problem. I need to learn to relax, right? So if anything, I should learn to play video games, but I won't. I would never let myself, chill out enough to do that. I'm a little bit intense. That's what people always say about me too. That's the biggest criticism I've ever gotten. People say, Caleb, you're intense. That's true. I can be a little intense, but I've gotten better over the years. I've learned to chill out a little bit over the years, but look, gardening, right? Someone said gardening, hunting, fishing. Well, not hunting, right? There's an animal rights implication there, but fishing, right? Bowling, bird watching, right? You got to do something that's not intense. You got to do something that's a little more, you got to let your mind unwind, as they say. I love going to the gym. That's what I do when I go to the gym. My mind unwinds. I just focus on sweating and energy, and it's great, right? It's really, really great. How to establish food sovereignty in the face of sanctions and an embargo with weak soil. Yeah, well, I don't know what country you're referring to, but sanctions and an embargo with weak soil, that is difficulty. I mean, you've obviously got to establish a relationship with other anti-imperialist states and find a way to make sure the USA can't interfere with those relationships. So there you go. But yeah, if you can't grow your own food and you've got sanctions on you, you're going to be in a very difficult situation. And that's why all the people blaming Venezuela for the problem. I mean, come on, right? And look at what they're doing to Alex Saab. Google the case of Alex Saab. Alex Saab, S-A-A-B. Read about that whole situation. I mean, it's pretty shocking what the United States is doing. Don't want to say too much about it because there might be something in the works, but look up the case of Alex Saab, right? Look up Alex Saab. All right, folks, it's been fun. A new upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today. And while the danger of a new world war still exists and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today. We need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. Fusion City now. 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 Out of the movement to the masses. Good night, everybody. Good night.